I'm Amanda Dotseth, curator of the Meadows Museum at Southern Methodist University in Dallas. We at the Meadows specialize in Spanish art, but when I give tours of the museum, I often get questions not about Spain, but about how some of the works in our collection were made, especially those that aren't oil on canvas. So my colleagues and I thought we'd walk you through some of the remarkable materials and processes involved in making a selection of artworks in the Meadows collection, beginning with this Renaissance panel painting. It's called the Adoration of the Magi and is by a painter called Rodrigo of Sajonia, suggesting he was from Saxony. Until recently, this artist was known as the Master of Siena, named for the convent this panel came from. It's quite large, at around 5 feet high by 4 feet wide, but it would have once formed part of a monumental altarpiece that filled the east end of a church with images illustrating the Bible or lives of saints. Imagine in this case some 36 images like this one making up the full altarpiece. Because of the size of this panel, it had to be made by joining multiple planks of wood together. In this case, 3 planks of pine. The 3 planks are joined together vertically with glue and nails or dowels. And you can actually see the nails as the bright white dots in this detail from the X-ray of the painting. The joined planks would have been reinforced from behind with wooden crossbars to help stabilize them and prevent warping from changes in temperature and humidity. But what you see here is actually a modern cradle added in the 20th century. Its goal was the exact same as the original crossbars, to prevent the panel from warping. Because as you can imagine, warping wood leads to paint flaking off, and that's the last thing you want. With the planks of wood securely joined together, the artist had to work to create a smooth surface for painting, which was achieved through a laborious process of applying layers of fabric or plant fibers in addition to multiple layers of gesso. And gesso is simply a mixture of powdered chalk and glue. At the time, glue was made by boiling animal hide, in this case, rabbit hide. But gesso also crucially provided a bright white ground for the painting, giving it an overall luminosity. With the ground layer in place, the artist could block out the design for the final composition. Like many artists at the time, the Master of Siena outlined this design using a fine brush and a paint called carbon black. Carbon black is a fairly common and inexpensive pigment made from scraping charred wood or bone and mixing the powder with a medium like oil or egg yolk called egg tempera. Thanks to an infrared camera, we can look below the painted surface and see the artist's elegant black underdrawing here, which of course the artist never meant for us to see, but it's really exciting that we can, because it's the underdrawing that helped us confirm that this painting was by the Master of Siena, and that he was an artist who was clearly an accomplished draftsman as well as painter. Finally, the master painter or members of their workshop could begin work on the painted and gilded surface we see today. Gilding usually took place first, and that is the application of super thin sheets of gold leaf, which were certainly the most valuable material used in this particular painting. The process is called water gilding because of the use of moisture to adhere the gold leaf to the surface of the panel. So the areas to be gilded were first primed with a mixture of glue and red-orange clay called bole. The clay acted as an adhesive, but also provided a warm-colored ground that complemented the gold leaf in a way the white gesso ground would not. And so you might actually notice when you're looking at medieval panel paintings that these bright orange sections shine through. And this is simply the bole coming through in areas where the gold leaf has flaked off over time. After carefully applying that gold leaf, it was burnished and punched with specialized tools. And I'll just note that the punching in this painting is particularly striking. It was used to create intricate patterns that would have glinted in the candlelight of the church. So it's important to think about how these materials and images were activated by their use in sacred space. After all that, we finally arrive at painting. The vibrant colors in this panel were made with pigments composed of ground minerals and plants. And I love the idea that we have literal bits of Spain here in our museum. However, and not necessarily the case in this panel, less humble materials were also used for pigments, such as precious stones, like lapis lazuli for ultramarine blue, Or red pigments could be made from insects like kermes or cochineal. So materials could sometimes be acquired locally, literally the earth under your feet, but others came from faraway places and were expensive. The materials in a single painting like this one could represent the wealth and political clout of an empire and its sophisticated global economy of trade. The master of Siena mixed his pigments not with egg tempera, but with linseed oil, which is slow to dry. That allowed the artist to mix colors while still wet, directly on the panel's surface. So as you can see, Renaissance artists had a sophisticated understanding of their diverse materials, whether wood, fiber, glue, insect, mineral, or stone. Each panel painting is the result of myriad chemical processes, mixtures, the acquisition of raw materials, and specialized tools that required the skills of a team of artists and craftsmen, very much aware that their customers wanted a beautiful but also durable product. Given that we can still enjoy this panel painting over 5 centuries after its creation, I think we can say that the master of Siena and his team succeeded. Thank you for listening, and I hope you will come see the Adoration of the Magi up close and personal when the Meadows reopens.